Well, thanks everyone. I love seeing the regular people.
I know.
I know there's people on Zoom that are regular people too, but I always encourage more people to come. I will say this is a story for everyone in terms of measurement of like who's in the room and how many people or whatever. Do you remember this conversation we had probably a couple years ago now? I said I'm so numbers driven, so I'm looking at it like, okay, there's a class. How many people are attending?
Yeah.
Is it working or is it not working? You know, that kind of thing. And that's how I'm measuring or looking at metrics to figure out, do we keep this thing? Is it a value to people? Is it not? Um, and something interesting came out of that conversation. I remember is she encouraged me not to look at the quantity of people that are in a room, but because we get a lot of views of it offline, and a lot of people reach out to me for a referral for a therapist, and a lot of people have reached out to her that have picked up therapy, which to me was like that completely blew me away because obviously she can't talk about what that looks like in terms of quantity or who that is. That's obviously a private matter as it should be, but how amazing is that where that's the measurement, right? Like, is this thing affecting other people or offering value to other people? What it does do is I think it creates a safe space. And interestingly, some of the people that have confided in me in Keller Williams and out, who have asked for a recommendation, who I've referred to Heather, don't come to this class.
Oh, really?
They don't come to this class. So what that tells me too is that it's the repetition of it's a safe space, it's a safe thing, right? Mental health is not a disease. It's not like it's not the all the kind of the myths around it. That it's okay. It's okay to talk about. It's okay to talk about. It's okay to talk about. To the extent that they're like, hey, can you give me the number to your therapist, or can you give me? They're asking me for that information, and which I love because I'm like, yeah, I'm more than happy to help. Interestingly, I've never seen that individual in the room.
Ah, so
So
fun.
there's a weird ripple effect, is my point, is that for this particular kind of thing, it's not necessarily a head count equals
Yeah.
whatever metrics we're trying to measure.
Yeah.
It doesn't really, work like that. So, and anyone else who's here in the room or on Zoom or watching recording, by all means, like this is not a real estate thing, right? We always talk about this is a you thing and a mental health thing, and it's a safe place to have conversations. And if you feel so inclined, share the video with a friend, a spouse, a family member, invite clients, invite a friend to it. It's not a KW thing. It's just like a we believe in you and mental health and you being okay kind of thing. So I just want to say that. Also, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
This is our first, thing back. I got you a Christmas gift.
You did.
Yeah. So I texted her. I was like,
He's laughing already.
what size are you? She's like, how dare you? I'm a lady. She didn't say that. So I have one too. Maybe we'll twinsy it one day.
What?
There is a company called SAD,
SAD.
but it stands for Stay Another Day.
Ooh, love this.
And it's really cool. So it says Stay Another Day on the front. And on the back, it's the 99 reasons to stay another day.
Stop.
And the idea behind it too, which I really love, it was really cool, is like if you're wearing it out and about or what have you, you could positively impact someone else who doesn't even know you, who's a stranger that might be going through some things, and they just kind of read it, put a smile on their face, and what have you. So
What a beautiful gift.
wear it
So
with
thoughtful.
love. Yeah.
I was like, he's gonna buy me a sweatshirt that says best therapist ever. This is so much better.
Yeah. So what is you're very welcome.
So sweet.
What is today's topic?
Today's teaser, which I mean, I'm terrible at teasers. Leanne will attest to that. My apologies, Leanne, for my faults. It's sort of a play on like new year, new me, and this idea of becoming, right? Okay. So I think what's interesting about kind of like the ROI, return on investment talk that you sort of like started with is I think we've quantified a lot of things in our lives.
Yeah.
Like if we do this, then that. If
Sure.
I do this, then that. If I do that, then this will happen. If I invest in this, it will return like this. And mental health is one of those kind of tricky things that you will always get a return on your investment, but it will unlikely be monetary or something that you can like put in a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And therapists will talk about, if anybody's heard of the feelings wheel, in the center are some of our like main feelings, and then from there kind of spikes out what those feelings mean. So if you are feeling angry, it could mean anything from frustrated to sad to grieving to hurt. Um, so you can sort of quantify your experience with a mental health professional by using a tracking mechanism over time of like how often you feel feelings and how intense those feelings feel. But it's really difficult to say, my therapy costs $150 an hour
Is that what I pay?
and
I'm just kidding.
and I'm getting this much out of it, because most of what you will gain from your therapy is qualitative.
Yeah.
So it's in the quality of your relationship with yourself, in the quality of your relationship with your friends and your family, your partners, people out in the world. Things like wearing something that will impact someone and you have no idea that the impact is happening. And I love that you talked about the ripple effect, because when people call me or email me or text me or contact me and say, I think I want to start therapy, it never is, okay, when do you want to meet? I always start with the same kind of 3 or 4 questions. Usually it's, you know, what are some of the things that you're experiencing that have caused you to reach out? Do you prefer male, female, non-binary, doesn't matter? Do you want in-person or telehealth? And do you want to use your insurance? Because I would say the majority of people who are looking for care would never think those questions prior to like meeting with a therapist. They just think I'm hurting or I'm anxious or I'm experiencing these symptoms or I'm having trouble in my relationships. And so I probably answer or ask those questions 2 to 3 times a week, whether it's somebody that I know or somebody that, goes to the website or whatnot. And so I probably see a tenth of those people end up in my practice.
Mhm.
Everybody else goes out somewhere. So they go to someone in my network, they go to someone in their health insurance network. And so I never will know the impact that my little spot in the world has on kind of the ripple of people accessing help and then kind of utilizing that help. So ROI is kind of a tricky one.
I think your ROI has its place,
Oh,
but that's the
sure.
thing, right? Like you got to put it in its right spot. And I think mental health um might not necessarily be one of them, or the
Right.
measurement's different because I heard you say like the measurement that someone needs for themselves, if therapy is working for them or not. And I, as you would know, is I'm funny about how I measure that. Like for me, I like to know like what's my triggers or what's wrong, and and I'm always like, well, does this make me this? Do I have this? What is it? Like I need to know like the categories of
You
where I'm
have like
at.
an exceptional curiosity about that.
Yeah, and I go in this whole like thing, and then sometimes Heather will drop this thing like we got 3 minutes left. She's like, by the way, look up blah blah blah. I'm like, oh my God. And I got like all this homework to do to figure out like what kind of condition I
Yeah,
have. And my mom did what? And this caused what? And
yeah,
I got questions later on or whatever. But for me, I think the the itch that is kind of scratched is like understanding.
yeah,
Um no, and the understanding of it for me, I guess understanding myself. So I really do like for me, I try to be a better human for those that are around me, my kids, my family, my friends, my agents, the whole thing. And it starts with like looking in the mirror, but it's hard because some people, when they look in the mirror, they're seeing what they want to see versus seeing what's there. And so that to making that adjustment, it's really tough.
yeah.
Whereas other people might go, I go to therapists because I just need to yell and vent and get something. They don't want to know stuff. They just want you to. I think I told you I had a therapist once that would fall asleep
Oh,
as I'm talking to him. I'm like,
it like hurts my heart to hear that.
there's
Sorry.
a couple, and so there's a couple times that he dozed off, and I started saying crazy things. I'm like, yeah. So I was on a plane with Sasquatch, and then the Loch Ness monster came in, and he's just like, "Mhm, mhm." And then I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm not even saying anything.
Yeah,
And he's just so I mean, the other thing that I would say is people who call me and say I need I'm not really open to therapy. I've tried it, it didn't work well for me. I would also suggest too, try a different therapist because
yeah,
there's a right therapist for the right person. And having a therapist doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Like it's not necessarily like a doctor type of relationship where it's like, I'm going to the doctor because I have the flu.
right.
You're not necessarily going to a therapist because you're sick. it's because you're trying to just unpack things, and everyone has things that the most sound and healthy appearing person has something to unpack. There's something there.
Yeah, and every therapist benefits from therapy too. You know, they've really started to talk in grad schools about people who are going to go into situations where they're holding space for people, knowing what it's like to have someone hold space for them.
Yeah.
And to sort of come around to this like new year, new me thing, people almost never come to me saying, you need to fix this problem. Like, I'm not a mechanic, right? But every once in a while I get someone who says, well, how many sessions is this going to take?
Right.
Like, how long is this going to be? And when I was kind of thinking about January, because obviously January, it's like the turn of the calendar and like everybody's like fresh and new, and we're going to do these like new things and we're going to change our whole lives. Like, let me just be clear with you that nothing in life will change you instantaneously, ever. Like, there's no such thing as, if I do this, then this automatically changes my entire life. These are investments that you're making in yourself that are both quantitative, because sometimes they cost money or they cost time. They're also qualitative. So they're going to shift and change the way that you feel about yourself and the world around you. And there's so many layers to that, right? So one of the things that I thought we could kind of like wax poetic about today is this idea of resolutions. And we've known each other for a long time, so you already know that I don't believe in like January 1st, you become a new you. Like, you can set intentions that you want to shift in your life, but do not January 14th expect that if you have, 90 pounds of muscle weight, you're going to all of a sudden have 120 pounds of muscle weight just because you went to the gym 6 times, right? So this idea that we have to become something else is one of the things that I think leads us to having unrealistic expectations of what happens when we make change in our lives. Because first of all, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you are not broken, you are not sick, you are a human being who's experiencing, I mean, already the first couple weeks of January have been kind of gnarly. Like, we have had, like, I had to turn my news notifications off, even though I'm super curious, because everything is just like to the X.
Yeah.
So when I was thinking about our conversation today, I thought first, like, what am I doing in 2025? Because obviously I have to be a model for people around me. And then what am I not doing in 2025? Because I think sometimes we forget to think about the things that we want to sort of take away in our lives. And the first one that, this is like kind of a big one, I guess, but the first one that I came up with is, I am no longer going to let people take advantage of my kindness. I have struggled for the longest time with allowing people to behave badly around me, with me, utilize my time, misutilize my time. I will almost always make accommodations for people. It's sort of in my nature. I've kind of always been that way. But what it has led to is this idea that I always have to show up and I always have to be 100%. So first I'm going to take something away, right? So I'm going to take away some of the access to me. And the second thing is I'm going to intentionally create space in the mornings that has nothing to do with my phone. I've fallen prey to scrolling on my phone for an hour and a half in the morning, sometimes under the guise of like, I'm drinking my coffee and I'm enjoying the sunrise and all this sorts of, meanwhile I'm like playing Candy Crush and like doing basically nothing beneficial for myself. So when you think about the calendar year or the new year or the thing, do you ever get stuck in like having a conversation with yourself about what you're gonna, like, these huge changes you're gonna make in your life?
No.
No?
What I typically, it's just funny because I talk about, I think I talk about it so much that I have to, like when you teach a class that they say like the pathway to mastery is to teach.
Mhm.
So I teach constantly about setting goals and avoiding the New Year's resolution
Mhm.
and that kind of thing, and just making, in fact, we just talked about this at a couple of days ago in one of the classes I taught about this topic. So I think it's not a big thing that I don't try to move big rocks. I try to just figure out what my goal is and back into it by making small but yet consistent changes or alterations throughout the year to ensure that I'm aligned with that goal. but nothing big. Like I'm not I got to go to the gym on January 1st. I'm already at the gym January 1st, but I'm
Yeah.
also at the gym on December 31st too.
Right.
So that stuff is not I've already made the changes. That's just making sure that I'm consistent with what I'm doing to kind of guide me there.
Yeah. How do you come up with your intentions? Where do your intentions come from? Or your like we call them triggers when things affect us, what we would consider negatively. But how do we know what are the things that trigger you to do something or shift something the other way? Like, how do you get to your intentions?
You talk about the feeling part of it.
Sure.
Gosh,
Or it could be
I
an
have
experience.
I mean, I have such a unbelievable fear of failure and
Mhm.
also letting people down.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
have, and I think it doesn't matter what role an individual's in, specifically though in mine, I have the care of so many people under me
Mm.
that that is also what helps drive me. Like in everything that I do, I'm always thinking, God, there's too many people relying on, whether they realize it or whether they acknowledge it or know it or not, my actions, good or bad, can negatively impact them. So I
Yeah.
try that helps at least with my motivation to stay consistent with intention.
Do you feel like the motivation is usually external? Like when you feel prompted to do something or change something or set an intention, do you feel
Yeah.
like it's usually externally
Yeah.
motivated? Okay. So does anyone feel like it's the opposite of that? Like you generally feel something internally before you're externally motivated?
I get that more in my personal life
Right.
than the business side of it. The business side is definitely external. External, if I can external, because on the personal life, internally, I have to make sure I care for my family. So they're connected, but they're different
But the caring for your family part is still externally motivated.
internally.
So internal motivation are things that we're prompted to change about ourselves,
Well,
regardless of the impact that it has on our environment. So this would be like, I am going to shift negatively minded thoughts in my head to positively minded thoughts in my head for myself, having nothing to do with how it impacts or, influences other people.
yeah.
So when we talk about internal motivation, those are things that we're doing solely I don't use 100% very often, but like 100% for ourselves. So how I talk about myself, there's more than one, sorry, spoiler, but how I talk to myself internally impacts the world around me, obviously, because it creates a human that shifts and changes. But how I talk to myself internally can also be solely motivated by how I want to feel about myself.
Hmm. The tone that I have with myself is terrible.
Right. So, I mean, in therapy, but also like in the world, we have conversations with ourselves all day long. And we're often thinking, if I'm kinder to my spouse will be kinder to me. If I'm kinder to my sister will be kinder to me, or she'll have a better experience in our relationship. But how do you isolate the internal stuff? Because this is the stuff that helps you become you or shift you, right?
Yeah.
And resolutions are often done so that they'll impact the world differently as opposed to solely motivated by how we want to feel about ourselves. And the gym is the perfect one, right? Because we say we're going to go to the gym, we're going to lose weight, we're going to do whatever, because we think the world needs us to look a certain way. We're often not motivated by us wanting to feel better. We are sometimes, but often it's because of some sort of thing that's been projected onto us. And so if I want to start having kinder conversations with myself, my argument or my belief would be that I need to shift the language with myself solely so that I feel better about me, not so that I can be a better human for other people. And I think that's the step that we skip.
All right, guys. Well,
I've
see you.
summed in, so
Also be like change your expectations for appreciation. So when you expect someone, or if you say if you're kind to your spouse, they'll be kind to you. If you just do not expectation but appreciation, what I appreciate, even if they don't, if they're not reciprocating, if you find what you appreciate in the person, that's goes to internal.
Sure.
It makes you feel better.
Sure, but still externally motivated because you're doing something intentionally to manage your relationship with the other person. And by the way, expectations probably will be one of the like next conversations, because we've had so many conversations about how we expect things from other people. And even we do it totally sub or unconsciously, right?
Yeah.
But I think this is why we have a hard time having a conversation about how we get in touch with ourselves, because we're usually defaulting to how it impacts something. And I don't necessarily, and I'll be clear, like, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I just think that in my practice, so many people come to me because something is wrong externally.
Yeah.
And they're like, help me understand my behavior so that I can impact something externally. But they often don't think about what's happening internally in the conversation that we're having with ourselves.
Sure.
So,
It's a wash the car, but don't worry about changing the oil.
right, exactly. And like even you, who I consider to be quite a smart human being, still flipped it to, well, I'm caring for myself so that I can care for my family.
Yeah.
Which is 100% admirable, and I do lots of things to care for my family. But what happens when you are faced with this idea of like, what actually makes me a better human simply for myself?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's an answer either. I think it's so, so how do we figure out that intention when you are setting some sort of goal or resolution? Doesn't matter what month it is. Obviously, January is usually motivating for people, but I am going to decrease my phone usage because my brain hurts when I sit on my phone for an hour in the morning, even though I can, quickly shift to another thing. And I'm not doing that for anyone other than I want my brain to feel better.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, are there tons of residual effects from that? Absolutely. But I need that goal to be motivated solely by how I want to feel about myself, and not be anything with expectations or appreciation or anything. I just want it to be about me. And I think we fail at that. Like, I think we have a really hard time solely focusing on ourselves.
That's interesting. I like it. I'm trying to get my brain
know.
right, because
See,
whenever I think of, first of all, I don't believe in resolutions either, because I don't, when I hear people set them, they always set something that's so like 300% over who they are as a person. And I literally I don't have the truth in me to be like, I'll talk to you next week when you're not even started with it. Yeah, I don't want to do that. No, I'm saying I would never.
right, but what if you did though?
What if I said that?
Yeah.
Not help anyone.
Huh?
I don't think it would help anyone.
You don't? So when I sit
Maybe
in,
at least they'll try for a month, so they'll be healthier for one.
Well, I have a lot of people that I know, some friends, some family, whatever, that I've known for a while, and every year I talked about this in my class that I just taught this week, and I said there are some people that they are the this is my year person.
oh, right.
And it doesn't matter what it is, but whether it's income or weight loss or whatever it is, the thing that they're aiming for is like, this is the year I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm like, what? I don't think you went to college yet. How are you going to, you know what I mean? Did you send your application to NASA? Like, it's so far
Right.
from being attainable. That's what I mean. And so back to what I was saying before is like, I think the resolution thing, I agree with you. It shouldn't be a measurement. What should be a measurement is like, well, what are you trying to do? And I'm looking more, you're coming from the healthy, like mental perspective. I'm just looking from like who you are as a business perspective
Oh,
too.
sure.
But whatever it is, it should be the little things that are attainable. Just do it consistently is the thing. So it's like, we've talked about meditation before. You're not going, well, you should meditate for an hour a day. How about just sit still for 3 minutes?
Yeah.
And do that for a month. And once you make that somewhat of a little bit of a regular habit, then take the 3 minutes and make it 7. And then whatever
Or like
the thing
leave it at
is.
3.
Right. Something.
Right. Like, but do the thing that's consistently creating the well.
Yeah.
Right. Like creating the wellness.
Yeah.
But how often do you really run into people who are setting like astronaut goals?
A lot.
Really?
I think some of it too is a KW thing.
Oh,
So,
sure.
so in a Keller Williams world, it's like, they're like, if people aren't laughing at your goals, it's not big enough.
Oh,
And I understand. So here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. This is not a KW thing. This is a mental health thing. I've said this before, is I love KW because it's like, it helps you like level up and helps you grow.
sure.
However, with that said, if we have 200,000 agents, they can't I can't talk to Tyler and go, Tyler, what's your goal? Let me help you get to your, I have to speak to the masses because as a leadership thing, whatever, Gary or anyone in
Right.
leadership is saying, they're speaking from a podium to a mass of 200,000. So it's almost like they got to go, everyone got to, you know what I mean? So they aim high and they know percentage wise, most people may not hit the goal, but everyone just leveled up to some extent.
Sure.
It can't be individualized because of the volume, the sheer volume of and size of our company. So with that said, you do get but I understand that a lot of people just go, no, I got to be an astronaut this year. It's on my vision board, and it's like, some of it is more to visualize that and to kind of get in the right mind space and understanding then as well that they're speaking to the masses, so you're aiming high, and even if you come short, you just leveled up 50% of what you could. Some of it is that I get that. A lot of people don't. So a lot of people are like, nope, my resolution this year has got to be real silly. You gotta laugh and mock it so that motivates me too to smash it.
I feel like I could argue this like both directions, right? Like you could argue that always setting a lofty goal will get you the small pieces, right? Which is what you're explaining, right? When you say it to the masses,
Yeah.
if everybody has a $50,000 goal, but everyone in that room gets $1,000, at least you've leveled something,
Sure.
you've created some other habit. But you could also argue that it's unrealistic for us to expect that people will only set goals that they can attain.
Right.
Right? Because people want to challenge, most people want to challenge themselves, not everybody. And as you go through the stages of life, you'll challenge yourself less and less, just sort of naturally over time. But I think the masses analogy actually just parallels what we're talking about. Because I imagine when Gary Keller gets on a stage, he's gonna say the same type of information consistently over time, right? Like he's speaking the same lofty, if you don't challenge yourself, like he's the big picture guy. But everyone in the room is going to be motivated differently by that challenge. So some people will set a $50,000 goal. Some people will set a $5 million goal. Some people will set a $5,000 goal. So at the end of the day, you've reached your audience because each person has been inspired in some sort of way, right? So I think what I was more getting at is if someone came to me in my therapy practice and say we're in a relatively new counseling relationship and they're still sort of building trust with me and they're still sort of figuring out whether or not this is the right fit for them, and they come to me with a goal of becoming an astronaut this year and they haven't finished high school yet, I would be doing them a disservice if I didn't say to them, I want to challenge whether or not that's a realistic goal for you.
Sure.
So I know that you guys do that in your relationships because all of you seem to me, at least from what I do know about you, you all seem to be pretty honest and straightforward with each other, but I imagine you do it with a lot of kindness. And maybe you come from a place of curiosity, like, well, tell me, what does it look like to become an astronaut this year? And then allow them to sort of back out of the, okay, so maybe I'll do what's the simulation that they do when they go into
VR.
No, when they go into a weightless tube and they float around, like maybe I'll do that this year and maybe my trip to Mars will be, 10 years in the future. But I think the idea that we're talking about is the same, right? Like we want people to set intentions that are lofty, but also realistic, because in the realism comes the small habits and the small things, right?
Yeah, it should be attainable, because I think that it could have a negative effect too. 10 years in a row of not hitting your goal or coming up substantially short because you set it so high,
right?
You could walk away going, gosh, I'm not worth it, or maybe this industry's not cut out for me. And if you don't recognize like all the growth that you've had, or you've set realistic goals that you smashed and then go, gosh, That's so great. Now now I can move it up a notch for next year or what have you, but I'm just saying, I think that's the individual part that some people just aim way too high right out of the gate. Some people do hit their, but and that method does work, because there are some people that they would attest to not having even remotely hit a goal even close had they not set it
Right.
so high and
Right.
had accountability partners and whatever the thing is.
Yeah.
You'll
never save $1,000 if you don't start with $5 a week.
Yeah.
Right. And then maybe some days or some weeks you have $10.
Yeah.
So you throw 10 in there. The other thing is like the automation of things, right? When we talk about money, we obviously talk about automation, because automation is what makes you successful, right?
Yeah.
If you tell yourself every week I'm going to transfer $50 into a savings account and you have to do it manually, you're much more likely to fail at that than if you just set it and forget it,
Yeah.
right? Because you'll learn to live without that $50,
Yeah.
whatever. What do you guys think? Like, what are your resolution
Everyone's scared to I don't have a resolution now.
beliefs? Like, does January serve as like a motivating factor for you to shift something? Is it like, I'll celebrate all of your guys' stuff, but leave my resolution-free life over here? What are you guys' thoughts?
I don't believe in resolutions either, just because the whole thought was like, we gotta go big, we gotta do big goals and crush that. I have intentions for this year. I'll share actually 3 intentions.
Love this.
First intention is Let Them. by
Did you
Mel
read the book?
Robbins. Love it. If you guys have not read
It's
Mel
great.
Robbins,
Fantastic.
or know who Mel Robbins is, please Google her. She's amazing. She's phenomenal. So that's my whole Let Them. Doing that. Second is closed mouths don't get fed. Meaning looking for my yes. If somebody tells me no, great, thank you, next. We're gonna move on until I get my yes. So there's always yes opportunity. And the last one is being okay to be selfish.
Yeah.
I think it's a really wrong word to put it though, but just being more, how is this gonna benefit me? I love to help people, that's why we're in this industry, but at the end of the day, how's it gonna benefit me? Yeah. That's my intentions.
Did you feel at all motivated by the flip of the calendar year to like sit down and do the intentions, or is this something that you think about relatively often?
I'll say relatively often.
Yeah.
I do have monthly reflections, hey, did we do at least one of the things lead up to my bigger intention?
Yeah.
Yes, great. Next month, we're gonna keep on working on that. So I think it's more like I have a habit almost.
Yeah.
Where I just check in and it's keeping myself consistent and persistent to that goal.
Oh, I love that. Consistent and persistent. I'm gonna write that down.
I believe in this.
You do? I love that.
Actually, it's not about the year, it's about the goals that you're working on, and the second event that Tony Robbins was all about.
She's been to 87 since you last saw her.
You have been busy. You've been to 87 Tony Robbins events since then. The cult
No,
is
just
working.
2. I have 5 more coming up.
I love it.
Basically 87.
Basically, the year.
But listen, can I just tell you that I love that is a deposit that you've made in your own life?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't
It's
matter
not
what
a
it is.
deposit. I cannot even tell you, I do not recognize the person.
I love
It's
this.
just like, what's that person? It's like, wow, it's really, it's transition, but it's huge transition. But what we did is we did set intentions, but it's more about we did pick 3 goals.
Mhm.
But the idea is who you are becoming, what you value, what you are choosing your destiny, but focusing on what you value.
Yeah.
So what are you valuing for the next year? And you do pick 3 goals, and my coach actually made me write down the why for each goal, in detail, and then brainstorm any action that I can take for the goal, the huge list of actions, and pick 20% that I commit to and I report to. So you don't do all the actions, but you do 20% that you're committed to, that it is a must, you have to.
Yeah.
If I'm not meeting my workout goal, I'm going on the weekend.
Right.
Because usually I don't work out on the weekend, but I'm going to, I have to, for the health, for everything, so 20% you're completely committed to. And my goals have deadlines because I have to, it's not my deadline, it's actually deadline of the event.
Right.
So it's if I'm not meeting that deadline, I have to wait another 2 years. So it's
some part of accountability is built into that.
Yeah, no, it's just one of the goals is the event that I want to get in.
Oh, yeah,
To next November, but you cannot just get into it. You have to be on a totally new level. So you
Right, but
cannot
that does
just,
hold you accountable to some
yeah,
extent,
you
right?
cannot
So that's
just
great.
keep to it.
yeah,
It has to, it's a different level. So it's like, okay, if not this, it's okay, but then it's next is in 2 years. And the idea is who you're becoming. So my favorite quote from the event was, what you get won't make you happy. Who you become will either make you very happy or very sad.
yeah,
So make a choice. Like, so anytime I'm doing anything, even like I'm opening and scrolling, like, okay, who you're becoming. Is it happy or sad?
Yeah.
No, I don't want to be that sad person.
right,
Done. And it's just more about like who you're becoming.
yeah.
And
So-
seeing the-
I feel like you mentioned something about this last time because it's part of what sort of inspired the topic for today with this idea of becoming. Because again, the thing that people hate about resolutions is it feels like a start and a stop, whereas becoming feels like a process. And so therapy's the same way, any sort of mental health treatment is the same way. You don't present with a symptom, take a medication, and the symptom goes away. The medication helps you manage the symptom. The symptom is probably with you for life, right? So if I'm easily distracted, I can use a medication to help keep me focused. But if I go off of that medication, the distraction still exists, right? So the idea of becoming is this holistic view of what are the things that are changeable and like alterable, and what are the things that I have to understand exist in me no matter what, that I have to work with. Like instead of trying to like get rid of them or eradicate them, how do I kind of bring them into what I'm doing to help them be either less of a barrier or shift them into something that's helpful. Like my distractibility is a trait that I didn't really realize I had until much later in life. But the distractibility actually is what I thought was my superpower as a multitasker. But then as a multitasker, I don't do any of those tasks really well. I do them all sort of 60% instead of doing them all, 90%. And so in learning about who you're becoming, I learned to use the distractibility as a tool, but recognize it. So my question is, am I distracted or am I focused? So yours is, who am I becoming? If I'm scrolling, I'm allowing rest, or I'm letting my brain take a break.
That's okay.
Totally.
This is what my coach said, just make a decision. Like,
Yeah.
I talked to her like I was like snacking too much. She's like, it's okay, make a decision. Are you okay with that? Or
Right.
it's not, like, do not judge yourself. Like, you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
And with like who you're becoming, but like one of my goals, actually, the resolutions is, it's also from Tony Robbins, like staying in a beautiful state, which he calls like all the, it can be high positive, low positive, but it's positive. Like you do not go to the negative state at all. Like they allow 90 seconds. And then, but we also are, he conditioned to certain movements because he's conditioning with the emotions and movements. So he get it into, so we have tools also to get, so if I do like certain movements or like certain, hear this certain things,
Right.
I get right back to it. So
Right.
you can feel your emotions for 90 seconds, you can write it down. Or if it's like something huge, it's like, it would be a day, but like not really, 90 seconds, you feel them, switch. And it's actually, it's working. Like,
Nice.
I've been amazed, it's just like, with that.
Nice. I have a slightly different take on that, mostly because I tend to allow much bigger gray areas than Tony Robbins does, and he has to because he's speaking to the masses, right? So like it has to be very specific. Mine is, you're allowed to feel the way that you feel, and you're allowed to experience what you're experiencing, but what we don't do is pack it in a suitcase and take it with us on a trip and then unpack it when we get there and live in it. So you can feel a certain way for a day or 2 or 3, but after about 3 days, we're looking at this as being something that we need to manage differently. We're not going to unpack our suitcase and live there. The one exception to that is grief, because grief is an incredibly powerful process. And if you experience a death, for example, I'm not going to tell you that you need to be through it in 3 days. It's just not the way it works. So there are, for me, exceptions to rules, but my general feeling of when I feel those, what we consider negative emotions, is you're allowed to feel them, you're allowed to experience them, but we don't unpack them and let them move in with us. So I don't know how we got, resolutions we were talking about. Also, resolutions is kind of a semantics thing too, right? Like word choice. Cause they're all relatively the same thing. You're sort of setting an intention to do something different. I think resolutions have gotten kind of a bad rap. Same with the word selfish. Nothing wrong with being selfish, right? But the connotation that we have with selfishness is that it's bad. As opposed to I'm focusing on something that I need to be able to be a better human for myself and the people around me.
You asked Tyler about, how he does it, if if he cares about it being a new year,
Oh, yeah.
right? My thought, I have a little bit of a different thought. I do like the calendar year thing, only because it doesn't mean that like suddenly 2025, I have to shed the 2024 version of me, and then not that,
Sure.
but it is just, to me, it's a reminder to kind of at least have a moment to reflect back on what did or didn't work.
Yeah.
So I can make an adjustment. It's just a time factor. It's not anything,
Yeah.
beyond that. But one of the things that I said in the class that I taught was, don't make a resolution, make a decision. And the way that I meant that was, the idea of resolution, if you do it the right way, it is you're setting an intention,
Mhm.
you have a goal, and you're making those changes and steps towards that goal. But that's not what happens. What typically would happen is someone shouts from the rooftop, "This is the year that I'm losing
Yeah.
40 pounds." And then they'll grab a donut, like, starting tomorrow, or whatever, right? So making a decision is just like, okay, forget the yelling from the rooftops, do the thing,
Yeah.
even as small as it might be, to get you closer to that goal, whatever that goal is that you're setting.
Yeah. I love this, the small decisions thing, because if I want to incorporate more healthy fats into my diet, I'm not going to throw away everything that lives in my fridge and start from scratch. I'm going to go to my next meal and incorporate a healthy fat in my next meal, or
Yeah.
whatnot. The other thing too that I think we get caught in is this idea of absolutes, and that it either has to be this way or that way. And you guys all know that I live in the gray. I can very sporadically think of times where I've had black or white decisions, and most of them have been related to safety, where it's like, we're not driving this car anymore because
Gosh,
this
that's so
car's not
funny when you
safe.
say that, yeah.
What?
When you say you live in the gray, because in my mind like
Where does
starts
it
to
go?
well, it's only because like it's not that's you're right. You're right when you're talking about people. People are
Yeah.
definitely gray. There's colors, right? There's different
Sure.
shades of different things. But when I hear that, I immediately go to like law school and to contracts. I'm like, no, there's
Oh,
black
right.
and white. There's a black
Yeah.
and white. There's a black and
Well,
white.
and there is, except there's an argument to every black
Oh,
and
sure.
white law.
Sure.
Like we had a board meeting last night for our building. The amount of gray that exists in this contract that we have with this
Oh,
one
sure.
construction company, right? Like, well, they're like, it says this, and I'm like, right, but that could mean this or that or
Yeah,
this.
it's
And they're like,
interpretation.
no, it means that. And I'm like, does it though?
Yeah.
Because that sounds like you win, and on the other side, we win. So we got to find some sort of way to meet in the middle. But the gray part, I think, is where we can find some of that success. Because if you ask the question, who am I becoming? I'm becoming a different version of myself. So that is a process. That's not a destination that you get to, right? Like the improved version of myself feels better, wakes up refreshed, drinks 8 glasses of water, whatever the current Surgeon General's recommendation is. Maybe the version of myself that I want, or that I vision, drinks a glass of water before they start their coffee in the morning, or like whatever the thing is. But that person that you vision in the future can only happen if you start somewhere. So maybe the somewhere is when someone asks me to change a session for the 50th time, I'm going to say, hey, you have changed the last 50 sessions that we've done together. So one of two things is happening. Either we're not scheduling based on the needs that you have, or therapy isn't something that you're able to prioritize right now. Right? That's really hard for a therapist to say. I want you to know that, like, we want everything to be harmonious all the time, and setting a limit like that can be really tricky. But if I do that, it then frees up this little tiny part of my brain that goes, see, you're important. See, your schedule matters. See, and that's just it's kind of an ambiguous example, but I feel like you said, this is the year that I lose 40 pounds. Why don't we work on maybe shifting something so you lose 1?
Yeah.
And then you start to feel successful. And 39 to go. And what's 40? Like, once you get to 40, do you go back to doing everything that you were doing before? Or
Yeah.
is it something that you're setting so that it looks different in the future, so that you feel better internally, love yourself more, and then don't have to talk about being selfish because you already are prioritizing yourself so that you do show up
Yeah.
for other people. So yeah, it's fun living in the gray.
I don't know that I could.
It's a
live there.
little bit confusing sometimes. Because again, you can like argue things
Yeah.
70.
This is an umbrella.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
What? It's actually a really good argument because that is a black and white thing. It's definitely not an umbrella. It's a microphone. So what's the gray?
If I go outside and I put it over my head and it blocks any kind of rain, I'm like, this is an umbrella.
That's true. There's your gray. See, you do live in the gray.
1 year of philosophy. It worked.
Philosophy was one of my favorite classes in undergrad.
Oh, I hated it so much.
And it was also one of like the worst classrooms because there was no windows. It was probably like a 10 by 10 room and there was like 12 of us shoved in there. It was the worst.
But wasn't there a window? That was just me being
The wind,
philosophical.
the
About
the
no
window
windows.
exists in your mind.
Yeah.
It's actually just a picture of clouds on the wall.
You know what else I was thinking about too is when you said like who do we become and as we try to grow,
Mm,
one of the things that I notice about myself at least is one thing that therapy has helped for me personally is how to judge and read the room for any room that I'm in, whether it's personal or business or what have you. And it's also created an unbelievable amount of empathy that I have for others as a result of whatever I'm trying to learn about me and whatever triggers me and what have you. But in doing so, that journey has given me an ability to really understand and read cues and all these other kind of things of what's happening with other people. And the empathy and compassion that I have for other people is if I know like I think I'm going through this thing or I'm feeling this kind of way because of this, this, and this. Now I'm aware of like, wow, that I can't like I literally think to myself when someone is mean or whatever they're acting, I literally go, gosh, I wonder what happened to them today or in their life or in their childhood that makes them the way that they are. And then I have a little bit of, and then I feel sorry for them
yeah.
to some extent, and it kind of tones down the, me getting upset, except road rage. I can't.
Oh,
Oh, I so
That-
I will be working on that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, me too.
having you on the road, and I do have, when someone is riding like too slow in the left lane, or just like whatever, and I lash out, then I do the ho'oponopono
Yeah.
with like, I'm sorry, I love you, please forgive me, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I drive by.
I do feel like this has been some of the basis of Mel Robbins's research for this particular book is this idea that we can allow people to be who they are. And I love this shift that's happening for you because we do tend to take so many things personally
Yeah.
that other people do that I would argue a very high percentage has nothing to do
Right.
with us.
Yeah.
Right. But we make it about us. And I'm not really sure we could probably wax poetic about that for a very long time about whether or not it actually is about us or not. But it's only about the interpretation that we have of that behavior, right? So when somebody mistreats me or somebody looks like they're being abusive to me in some way, it is about me as the object of it, but it's not about me like the intention of it.
Right.
And that's what helps you shift
Yeah.
to this person is not yelling at me.
Yeah.
This person is yelling at their mom or
Yeah.
poor moms, they get such a bad rap, but like this person's yelling at the person who hurt them.
Yeah.
Now being able to flip that in like a class or whatnot, I had a group not that long ago where I don't know what was happening with this particular individual. Oh, it was direct service workers for folks who are houseless, and we were doing clinical supervision. And I don't know what happened to him that day, but whatever it was coming at me like he went full on like, why are we here? What do you even know about anything? When was the last time you did outreach? How would you even know? You're just sitting over there, he like just let me have it. And the whole time my insides are like fireworks, right?
Sure.
Because I'm like, how have I failed them? How did I come into this room today? And they're thinking that I'm thinking, and I had to sort of like, as he was speaking, say to myself, this doesn't have anything to do with me. This isn't about me. This isn't about my style. But I do have a responsibility to shift based on that person's behavior, right? So I think what I ended up doing was saying, I 100% hear what you're saying. I can certainly see your perspective. And one of the options that you have right now is free will to exit this group. Like, you don't have to be sitting in here. It's not mandatory.
Yeah.
And, then came the, oh, so now you're kicking me out. Now I can't have an opinion. And I said, oh, no, I would love to have you stay. But if this is an environment that isn't productive for you right now, or if you're not able to participate in the way that is helpful for you, I just want you to know that you're welcome to exit if that's what works for you, and no harm, no foul. And it did end up making him more angry that I stayed calm, because I think he wanted to fight.
Yeah.
And I think the fight might have actually helped, but remember, we tend to go to what's familiar. So if fighting and arguing is familiar, that's where he wants me to go. And
Yeah.
so the unfamiliar is somebody like responding with respect and compassion and whatnot. But the shifting can be the hard part. So like my insides were on fire. I was like, who like, I did not work 15, like I went into that whole indignation thing. But a classroom setting is cool because you can also shift it to like a learning opportunity too, right? When somebody is angry or upset about something, you can pivot it very quickly into like using that information as a learning opportunity, which I imagine you're very good at.
People are tricky.
You're telling me.
You should do this for a living.
I will tell you, where we went for Christmas, my sister-in-law's a psych APRN, advanced practice registered nurse, and my brother-in-law's a psychiatrist. So we often have really kind of
So fun.
robust, yeah. And of course, like one of my nieces is becoming a doctor, the other one wants to go into social, like it's super fun. But one of the kids asked me, have you ever thought about doing something else? Because I've pivoted careers before in my life. And I said, I literally cannot imagine doing anything other than what I'm doing. And to me, that feels like who I've become, right? Like this is the me that I want to be. I also think about getting a doctorate, and I think about writing a book, and I think about all other things too. But really, like one of the most amazing thing that's happened in my 40s is I really like who I am.
Yeah.
And I really like what I'm doing. And that to me feels like the ultimate foundation of like continuing growth.
Yeah.
And setting intentions and being present and doing all the things that I want to do. Now it's the little stuff that you shift and alter.
I'd love to feel that once I get to my 40s, but I have.
You have a
I'll
couple
take it there.
years still, yeah.
Is there anything in chat?
Oh yeah, sorry, completely forgot we even had folks.
No, okay. Well, I know we have a couple minutes left. Does anyone have any questions, comments?
What my new thing is just remind myself that people are doing the absolute best they can with the information they have and just with the conditioning they have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
those two last parts are the key, right?
Oh yeah.
Right when you said they're doing the best they can, I'll go, okay, yeah, that
And
makes
it's
sense
just,
now.
your mistakes, if you like, also what Tony Robbins said, like if you would not go to a bad movie. Like, why would you replay, like, especially, he doesn't recognize the childhood trauma. Like, he's just like, he gets you out, switch it to appreciation because you are the person you are today because of that. If your parents gave everything you wanted, you would be a totally different person. You would not be as strong. So change to appreciation.
You're like seeing my internal struggle.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
I have a hard
yeah.
time not wearing my
Oh, no,
emotions on.
I heard, I'm looking looking at you and I hear the gears.
Yeah.
Crank, 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 crank,
And it's
crank.
fine, it's fine, I don't totally agree, and I think that's the beauty of humanhood, right? Like, I'm sure if I ever met Tony Robbins, I would have a lovely time chatting with him, and it would be fine if we disagreed. That's the thing, is I don't need to be right, and he doesn't need to be right. He just needs to be in the space that he's in at the time that he's in to impact the person that he's impacting, because maybe that's what that person needs to hear,
Yeah.
right? Sorry, I interrupted you though.
That's fine. There were just people standing up and just like crying right
Yeah.
away, like,
Yeah.
oh, my mom, and he's like right away, like, oh, you don't need to feel this way right now. Like, you can if you want to, but it's no longer there. It's just the file that you keep replaying.
Yeah.
And keep going back. So if you wouldn't go to a bad movie, why you keep replaying that?
Yeah,
And plus, he says like we change our memories every 2 years. We change the memory.
100% agree with that.
So
I mean, the stories that we tell
Not even
ourselves.
accurate. and you keep replaying it and you keep attaching the feelings. And the same for mistakes, like you did, like, okay, maybe you're not happy with everything you did in life, but you did your best with the information you had at that time. And the person you were, so why you keep replaying it, just don't go forward, don't go back.
If there is anyone listening or ripple effect hearing this later that is concerned about going to therapy because you think you're going to have to process all of that trauma, one of my most favorite psychological shifts that's happening right now in the practice of therapy is we don't have to sit and relive and talk about and recount all the things that have happened to us in our lives, because our memory is actually not super reliable. So I love the shift of, if you want to tell me the story, I will 100% hear you, but reliving it is not going to shift your success in therapy. Like, you don't have to tell me about what happened when you were 5 if that's not going to be productive to you. But what I do insist on in my practice is understanding themes that have happened throughout your life so that we can either debunk them or lean into them, right? So if you grew up in a household where you're not good enough unless you get an A+, we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to rewire that. But it isn't sitting and pushing on that button.
Yeah, he goes like, okay, now tell the story in Mickey Mouse voice.
Right.
It's just like and now in like a duck voice.
Right.
To understand, they start laughing. Like, okay,
Or say it in Spanish.
Yeah,
People are like, you know, it shifts the way that you think about it. Yeah.
But also that's interesting too, because I don't think it's a right or wrong thing. I think it's just what's right for the right person at the right time.
Yeah.
Because obviously he has a tremendous amount of success.
Mhm.
Traditional therapy has a tremendous amount of success. There's different therapy methods
Yeah.
that have come up throughout the years. And then if you read anything in medicine, it's like, there's a new thing.
Right.
What we said before, just kidding.
Right.
Going forward, this is now the new thing. And then there's a new study that comes out. So there's I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that work for a lot of people. And I don't know that are necessarily bad. Like it is a journey. It might be a detour, but it's a journey of some sort. There's opportunity to level up as a result of it. So what's on for next month?
Ooh, I don't know.
We
I
haven't picked
think
yet.
we talk about relationships because it's February and everybody loves to talk about Hallmark's Valentine's Day.
Oh my God.
And there's nothing better than a Reese's peanut butter cup heart.
Oh, she's
I think
write
it's
that
the
down.
best.
Someone write it down.
I think it's
Kit
the
had
best
very
candy of the entire year is the hearts at Valentine's Day, closely followed by the trees at Christmas.
I still have some left from Halloween. So what if I just kind of shaped it? No, not as good. Okay, got it. Heart-shaped ones,
But
fresh from the store.
I thought we might talk about that, because February is the month of Valentine's Day. But of course, I'm always open to. Did anything spark today?
Great. I think it's great.
I think what's sparked for me, especially who I am becoming,
Love this.
is accountability.
Yeah.
That's what it all comes down to, is accountability, and
Yeah.
holding yourself accountable for your intentions, your resolutions, goals, whatever it may be. And that's up to you.
And the role of grace in accountability, right? Like, how do we have accountability,
That's a
but
really good one.
also
That's a good component.
like layer it?
Because accountability without grace is failure. It can be
It's harsh.
a swift backhand.
Right across the.
Grace doesn't exist in my house sometimes, so I gotta make sure, I gotta move grace in.
We've been working on grace for 6 years now.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Happy New Year. to
Happy New Year.
everyone. Thank you
Thanks
all
for
being
joining.
here.
We'll see you guys next month.
Yeah. Thanks, Joel.
Bye at home. Bye Zoom.